want to start this episode of What Was I Thinking congratulating my brother and his wife on a beautiful baby girl, their first child, my first blood niece, my mom's first grandkid, and it was really cool. I was actually in Dallas where my brother lives. I don't think that's a secret. I was there last week for Podcast Movement, which is a podcast conference that you might have heard of because some people got upset that a podcaster was there. And that might sound like a joke, but it's not. But I want to say congratulations to my brother and his beautiful wife on their beautiful daughter. And I got to meet her the day she was born. It was the freshest baby I've ever met. I think just super, so fresh that you're like, I felt like Michael in The Office when, what's his, Pam? No, not Pam. Jan had a baby and he held it in like the baby seat. Like I didn't even get to hold her. And not because I most likely would have dropped her because I feel like I should hold her on top of a beanbag chair. I drop a lot of things, so a fresh baby I should not be holding. Is it wrong? Is it weird to call it fresh? Like mint condition baby. And I was nervous. I was just nervous. Like I didn't even know. I learned so many things. I learned the umbilical cord does not like I like to ask silly questions. So I was like, innie or outie? And my brother's like, the umbilical cord is still there. And it will be there for a while. That is, I am 34 years old and I just learned that. I've never, to my knowledge, had a kid. If anyone's out there who says they have my kid, I'm going to be honest, you're probably a liar. But to my knowledge, I haven't had a kid, and I had no idea. Also, it's just cool to be an uncle. That's fun. Joey's daughter calls me uncle, it's been wonderful my whole life. But this is the first, I don't have any other siblings. So to have one of them have a child is just really awesome. And it was great. It was really nice to have, my mom was in Dallas. I was in Dallas. And it was just cool to be there as a family and get to meet her. So welcome to the world. And I don't know if your name is out there, so I'm not going to say it. But you know what your name is if you're watching this in the future. Hopefully I'm a good uncle. Definitely going to be silly. Definitely not going to be too serious. There's so much to talk about because I haven't been on here a month, and I am going to talk about that in a little bit. But speaking of Joey's daughter, I got to go see Joey and his family for a week, or the majority of a week, a few weeks ago, and it's now that even makes seeing my niece even stranger because I knew Mercy. It was probably like a week or two into her life, I would imagine. I'm just kind of an idiot. Like I was thinking about it. I didn't go to the hospital to see Mercy. I don't know if I was supposed. I apologize to Joey and his wife if I was supposed to go. I don't know what. Is that something people do? That I guess pre-COVID you just go to the hospital? I just figured people would want to be alone and not have guests because I just hate. Almost all guests are unwanted guests. And that sounds like a joke, and it is. There are obviously people that I like. But I always lean towards people don't want me around. And that's a joke, but B, I don't want to be in the way. But I've known Mercy 99.9% of her life. And to see her earlier this year, and then this was the most time I've spent with her in a long time, and see how big she's getting, how smart she is, how funny she is. And then to see my niece at the very beginning of her life. I mean, the only way I could have seen her more of her life is to be in the delivery room, and I feel like that it's a little bit much. But it's cool. I've always liked kids. I feel like I, for the most part, have a good rapport with kids, mainly because I have the emotional intelligence of probably a 7-year-old. I like to be silly. I'm not usually too serious with kids, but I looking back, I thought I would have had kids by now, and not saying that I regret not being in a not having kids with an ex, because that would have been, I don't want to say terrible, but I do think that I'm right where I'm supposed to be. But I remember as a kid that I thought I'd have kids young, and now that I'm 34, I still, honestly, in my brain, I would love to know 23, 24, I would guess, is how I feel in my brain. Like, as a person, I don't really know how much I've grown since then. I mean, that's not true. I guess I've grown, but just my thoughts on the world, my thoughts on life, and I've been dating someone with kids for a year, and I see the people in that life. Like, I see a life I could have had I don't even know if I could have gotten married during the church. There was nothing, it's not like I wasn't allowed to get married, but just very different. Like, I was, when I was in Dallas, I went and saw Brian Simpson at the Addison Improv, which, by the way, if you have a love of comedy, or you like going to stand up, if you like to laugh, go see Brian Simpson wherever he is. Sam Lopez opened up for him. Asana Ahmad opened up for him. They're both in Austin. I don't know. I'm assuming if you just Google Brian Simpson, he has a Netflix special. He's been on Rogan a bunch. So funny. But I went to a show, and then we just hung out until like 1 a.m. And I haven't done that in a long time, since I've been working this like 8 to 5 job. And I definitely, I miss it. I missed a lot about it. I'm not a real social person, which is strange. Which I do the what I had in Dallas with Sam, Brian, and Asan, is pretty much was like perfect socially, because it was us four, and there was something to talk about because I just saw the show. We were talking about comedy. And I knew that it wasn't going to go, and this is nothing against them. I always feel like I don't want to ever overstay my welcome. And so like short social interactions I thrive. That's why I think I thrive with like small talk. Like actually, it was kind of fun. At Brian's show, I just sat in the back, and I was at a table, a 4-person table with a couple. And they didn't know who I was, that I'd done a podcast, and we just started chatting. And the show was starting, so we couldn't talk during the show. But if you're like me, and you're like, how to, like, and this might seem weird to some people, because there's a lot of people who are really social. Like you could put Joey for example, in a room with people that he had never met, and within a few minutes, if he had to or wanted to, Joey could be having like a great time laughing. If I'm in that situation, I'm in a corner by myself. Not that I don't, because that's what I think maybe people don't realize about, like, at least what introverted is for me, is it's not that I dislike those people. I just don't really know how to get started into a conversation, really. Like, I would love to be able to just talk with people and not feel self-conscious or feel like I'm boring. I don't know what that is, but just being at that, like, just hanging out with that couple at Brian's show when I knew that there was, like, the show was going to start, that's where I really thrive socially. I don't do, like, big parties. I don't do well where it could go on for hours. Like, so I was, like I said, I was in Dallas this weekend, and thank you to, there were a few people who did say hi. I'm sorry if I couldn't hang out for a long time. I was with some coworkers, and we were just going back and forth to appointments, and I was trying to listen to some sessions this week. But there were parties at the end of the night at nightclubs, and it was nightmare might be underselling it, to be honest. It has nothing to do with the people there, and it has everything to do with me. A crowded club where I can't hear myself, much less someone who's talking to me. And I think what my least favorite part about clubs are, you saw me thinking because I was trying to think if it was clubs is or clubs are, but I think it's clubs are. My least favorite part about clubs is or are, I don't know. I'm sorry. Being touched. I'm a big hugger. I'm a big hugger. If I know you, I'm always, when people come up and want to take a picture, I'm a hugger. If I just meet you and I actually talk with you, I would love to touch. But if I'm like already in a crowded space and someone's like sneaking by, it's like why I can never fly Spirit. Spirit, you would think, would be my jam because I love a deal. Oh, I fucked up last night. I'll tell you about that. But I can't do Spirit because the seats are so close together that there's no way to really get anywhere without touching someone. And I would rather just not go wherever I'm supposed to go than be that close to anybody. And I just didn't do well. I lasted about an hour at this club, and the only reason I lasted more than 2 seconds was because my coworkers were there. And I felt like my company sent me to the conference that I should be at the party. But I didn't know anybody. Am I going to stare at your name badge and yell in your ear the first moment I meet? It's just so far not me that and that's what I want to talk about is like changing a little bit. But that's one thing that I don't think will ever change about me is just being. I'm always going to be an introvert. I'm always going to be shy. But one thing that I do want to change is the reason why I haven't done a podcast in about a month. And some of it, I could make excuses and say, well, I was traveling, which I was. I was in Jersey and Philadelphia and Dallas. I took my mom to a Red Sox game because my mom is in Dallas for an extended period of time to be with her granddaughter. And so I took her to a Red Sox game just to not say goodbye, but, just celebrate her becoming a grandmother. And I don't know when I'm going to see her next. But I could have done a podcast. I'm not that busy. For my entire life, and I wish I knew why, and I've been thinking about going back into therapy, and I don't know if therapy would even help with this, but a problem that I have is quitting things. I don't like it, but it's just something that I do. Like, for example, I might join a bowling league. I'm never gonna do that. But the reason why I thought about that is I hate bowling. Like bowling, if anyone ever if hell's real, and if I go to hell, I'll have to bowl for eternity in a nightclub. That would really be hell for me. I remember as starting in like maybe late elementary school, middle school, you start going to birthday parties at bowling alleys, or you can't really hang out anywhere. You're 13, but your parents drop you off at a bowling alley. I don't know what kids do now. Maybe kids are doing coke. I don't know what I did. I was doing activities like that. But I always hated bowling because I was terrible at it. And I've been feeling for a little bit that I've been terrible at this, and I tried reaching out for story submissions, and I've got a few good ones, but the submission slowed down because I'm not promoting it, and this goes back to me with the social thing where I think I'm bothering people. I don't know if you know this. I had an intern when I had my office before I got this job. I had an intern, and I have a Google Drive full of clips from my earlier episodes that I just refused to put up. Literally all I would have had to do is upload them and press publish. Someone went through the episodes and took clips, and I just couldn't. I would look at them and I hated them. And I hated the idea of me bothering you with clips. Which I know, saying it out loud, and this is why I like therapy, but sometimes, and it's not that therapy is a waste, because it's not a waste. But I think what is good about therapy is just saying things out loud, because before that it's just in your head, and there's something about actually hearing the words that sometimes makes me realize how stupid I am. Because it's not like I'm sitting there with a phone asking you to watch this clip. You would have to click on it. You would have had to make the choice to click on the clip. But for some reason, the idea of posting a clip was like, it made me physically like ladies, when a guy wants to hug you that you don't want to hug, or I don't know what it is for guys, if maybe it's just a guy hugging you. It just feels like icky, like you just feel gross. That's what I felt like when I would try to post it. And I posted a couple of them, but I could just never get myself over that hump of self-promotion, of putting it out there. I had Coach HP on this podcast, and he said, well, why aren't you reaching out to all the comedians who are on the church and having them on your podcast? Not all of them would have said yes, but I guarantee some of them would have. And I just, for whatever reason, I can't. I make excuses, and I just don't allow myself to do that stuff. And when I felt like I really had nothing to say over the last month, my plan was to end this podcast. I felt like I had nothing really to say, and I felt like I was wasting your time with this podcast, and I don't want to do that, because I do appreciate everyone who listens, and there's not a humongous amount of you, but part of going to that podcast conference this week is helps me realize how lucky I am that I have anyone who watches or listens. But I think what I realized, especially hanging out with Brian, Sam, and Hassan, is that I'm not doing enough. That's why I feel like I have nothing to say. I'm not doing enough to give myself something to say on these. I always, what's the word I'm looking for? Default to things that feel comfortable and feel safe. And to me, that's watching TV, eating, being lazy by myself. And I think that's also probably part of the reason why I'm not good in social situations, because I default to what feels safe, which is being alone and being quiet rather than putting myself out there. So I am sorry for taking a month off. But I'm going to do more. I'm going to do more to be a better self-promoter. I'm going to do more to be a better podcaster. I'm going to do more to be a comedian. I can't even say a better comedian because I've done it once. Oh, I did it with Joey in Jersey. Joey let me do a few minutes on his show, and it just showed me. This is one thing that I'll say about myself in comedy. And I was just at the beginning of my third year when the pandemic hit and I left LA. I was fine for the level that I was at. I will say that. There were people who were a lot better than me at my level, but there are also people who were worse. And I don't know if I'll ever be a professional stand-up comedian. I don't know. And I think what is not interesting, but what I've noticed about myself in stand-up is for years when I was with Joey, people would ask me if I'm going to do stand-up, and I would always say, no, I'm not that kind of funny. And then Dice told me I should try it, so I tried it, and I fell in love with it. And there's very few things, like I said with this podcast, I felt like I wasn't good. There's very few things that I think I have a talent for. And I wish that wasn't true. And like I said, I don't even think I'm a feature yet. I think I could, if I get back to where I was when the pandemic hit, I think I could become a good host. I have the time to be a good host, but it takes a lot of skill, which I didn't have and don't have right now. But with almost everything that I've done, I've always felt like I didn't do a good job in TV editing and podcasting and relationships, school. I just never, even if I got good grades, I didn't think I did well. And for some reason, when I do well, I can see it in stand-up. And I think maybe it's because it's a more immediate response. And people who were in Jersey and people who I've spoken to people who saw me in Jersey a couple weeks ago, and they said, oh, you did very well. I didn't. I really didn't. I did C- at best. And I think it's important for me to be honest with myself about it. People will say, oh, no, you did great. I got a couple laughs, but it wasn't. I've had good sets before. My set in New Jersey was not good. But it did show me how much I missed it. It showed me how much fun I have when I'm doing it, how much fun I have hanging out with comedians. So, and I also know that when I do stuff, like when I hang out with Brian, when I go to clubs, like when I am in Dallas, that gives me things to talk about on here. And I can't expect to have things to talk about on a podcast if I'm watching The Sopranos all night, which I have started again and is great. But I need to force myself out of being comfortable, and I think that's partially why I was so fat. Is food was comfort, and it was safe, and I don't. There's people who talk about like the Jocko Willnicks or Cameron Haynes or David Goggins about like, what is the term, like embracing the suck? I've never for a minute embraced the suck. Yeah, I can't say that I have. There have been times that I've been unhappy, but I've enjoyed overall the experience. Like, you're working a job like in high school, like when I worked at a movie theater, CVS, like that. I mean, if you look back at it, the movie theater was kind of cool, but like working at a CVS or all that, it can suck, but it's not that hard. You work 8 hours, you scan a few vitamins, and you go home. Like I'm talking about like working out for me, or self-promotion, or calling friends back. All of these things that make me uncomfortable, I just don't do. And I'm also not going to sit here and turn into a mini David Goggins and say you got to do it. What I need to do is find a better balance, because I do think I'm going to be myself, and I do think I'm going to still have the struggles that I've had. And I'm not a motivational person in the least, I don't think. But what I'm saying to you, and thank you for listening, is a way I'm going to try to better myself is to try to do a little bit more of what I don't like. Or not even that I don't like it, because I don't know if you should do things that you don't like, to be honest. Maybe you should, but I'm going to try to do things that make me uncomfortable. Because just being uncomfortable doesn't mean it's not fun. And that's my goal. I'm not ending this podcast. I'm not sure what the format's going to be. If you send me stories to wwitpod@gmail.com, I would happily read them. Please send this to your friends. Please tell them about it. But I'm going to do more of these. I'm going to try to have guests on. I'm going to treat this, and I think, and this has been talked about in podcasting for a while, is the word podcast is going to change. I'm not someone who's going to have like a format the entire time. I think I'm going to have multiple formats. And I think I'm just view this more as a blog than a standard podcast. A video and audio blog that just lets you into my life, and you'll see what I'm thinking that week. It could change. I could switch ideas, but that's where I am today. August 29th, I guess, will be the when this comes out. So that's where I am, August 29th of 2022. I got a long way to go, and thank you for coming along on the ride. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week. I promise. I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.